Should well-being be taught in school? The prevalence of depression among young people is shockingly high worldwide. By some estimates, depression is about 10 times more common now than it was 50 years ago. This is not an artifact of greater awareness of depression as a mental illness, since much of the data arises from door-to-door surveys that ask tens of thousands of people, did you ever try to kill yourself? Did you ever cry every day for 2 weeks? And the like, without ever mentioning depression. Depression now ravages teenagers. 50 years ago, the average age of first onset was about 30. Now the first onset is below age 15. While there is controversy about whether this rises to the scary Appalachian epidemic, all of us in the field are dismayed by how much depression there is now and how much of it goes untreated. This is a paradox, particularly if you believe that good well-being comes from a good environment. You have to be blinded by ideology not to see that almost everything is better in every wealthy nation than it was 50 years ago. We now have about 3 times more actual purchasing power in the United States. The average house has doubled in size from 1,200 square feet to 2,500 square feet. In 1950, there was 1 car for every 2 drivers. Now there are more cars than licensed drivers. 1 out of 5 children went on to post-high school education. Now, 1 out of 2 children does. Clothes and even people seem to look more physically attractive. Progress has not been limited to the material. There is more music, more women's rights, less racism, more entertainment, and more books. If you had told my parents living in a 1,200 square foot house with me and Beth, my older sister, that all this would obtain in only 50 years, they would have said, that will be paradise. Paradise it is not. There is much more depression affecting those much younger, and average national happiness, which has been measured competently for half a century, has not remotely kept up with how much better the objective world has become. Happiness has gone up only spottily, if at all. The average Dane, Italian, and Mexican is somewhat more satisfied with life than 50 years ago. But the average American, Japanese, and Australian is no more satisfied with life than 50 years ago. And the average Brit and German is less satisfied. The average Russian is much unhappy. Why this is, no one knows. It is certainly not biological or genetic. Our genes and chromosomes have not changed in 50 years, nor is it ecological. The old order Amish of Lancaster County, who live 30 miles down the road from me, have only 1/10 of Philadelphia's rate of depression, even though they breathe the same air. Yes, with exhaust fumes. Drink the same water, yes, with fluoride, and make much of the food we eat, yes, with preservatives. It has everything to do with modernity, and perhaps with what we mistakenly call prosperity. The 2 good reasons that well-being should be taught in schools are the current flood of depression and the nominal increase in happiness over the last 2 generations. A third good reason is that greater well-being enhances learning, the traditional goal of education. Positive mood produces broader attention, more creative thinking, and more holistic thinking. This is in contrast to negative mood. which produces narrowed attention, more critical thinking, and more analytic thinking. When you're in a bad mood, you're better at what's wrong here. When you're in a good mood, you're better at what's right here. Even worse, when you are in a bad mood, you fall back defensively on what you already know, and you follow orders well. Both positive and negative ways of thinking are important in the right situation, but all too often, schools emphasize critical thinking and following orders rather than creative thinking and learning new stuff. The result is that children rank the appeal of going to school just slightly above going to the dentist. In the modern world, I believe we have finally arrived at an era in which more creative thinking, less rote following of orders, and yes, even more enjoyment will succeed better. I conclude that, were it possible, well-being should be taught to school because it would be an antidote to the runaway incidence of depression, a way to increase life satisfaction, and an aid to better learning and more creative thinking.